Hello. Hello, everyone.
Hello.
Hi. Okay. Thanks for joining us on a Saturday afternoon. So today, right now, we have Jiaxing from Developer Space Singapore with me and Wei Yan, our speaker. So Jaslyn will join us in a bit. So we'll proceed. Okay. So today we're just gonna have two speakers. One is Jaslyn, developer advocate of Chrome DevTools Google, and Wei Yan, GDE for cloud technologies. Yep. Yeah, and a special thanks to Developer Space Singapore for helping us with the hosting. And a few words from Jiaxing from Developer Space.
Yep. Hello. Hi, everyone. I'm Jiaxing from Google Developers Relations team. And I just wanted to take this time to share a little about what we do and who we are. So Google Developer Space, it's a platform for developers and startups from around the region to learn and connect with one another. And as part of developer relations team, we aim to empower and connect the community to our people, programs, network, and technologies. Yep. So I think Wei Yan is a superstar today because earlier today he just hosted another event in GDG Singapore. Yeah, and now he's having his second event and he'll be speaking. Yeah. So if you're looking to host events online to the developer communities, feel free to reach out to us anytime. Yeah. Over to you, Eric.
Okay. Thanks, Jiaxing. So we'll go with our first speaker, Wei Yan.
Thanks,
Okay.
Eric.
Thank you, Wei Yan. So Wei Yan is going to be talking about implementing trigonometry in SCSS and the things he learned experimenting, right?
Yes.
Okay, nice. So I'll pass the floor to you.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay. Hi, everyone again. My name is Wei Yuan. I'm a GDE in Google Cloud. And actually very different from my domain. I'm going to be speaking about this very interesting and very wacky topic, something I worked on quite some time ago. So name of the topic is implementing trigonometry in SCSS. I hope most of you remember what exactly is trigonometry. I'll be recapping a little bit later on. It'll be probably like an old friend that you haven't seen in quite a long while. So yeah, let's get started. Okay, so just want to talk about the problem statement. What exactly was I trying to solve? Why was there a need for trigonometry? Okay, so the idea was basically this. I wanted to recreate this moving image as you see over here within one of our web applications. Okay, so the larger context of this problem was within this site called Soompi. For those who don't know what Soompi is, it's a K-pop publication news site. There are other sites out there like all K-pop and things like that as well. So Soompi was one of them where you can actually use the site to look at the latest news in regards to K-pop related stuff, K-dramas and things like that. Okay, so part of what we had to do was that we were looking at rewriting the entire application from a WordPress application over to a service-oriented architecture, multiple applications, some on the front end, back end, mobile applications. Okay, so the idea is that this basically this application itself, when we rewrote this, we had a redesign, a rehaul of the application. So this animation, this loader, in fact, this is a loader animation, was used as part of our redesign. Okay, so we had to be able to add this within our site. Okay, so I think basically just from a very brief overview, right? Or once you look at this, right, you might already have some ideas on how to resolve it. So I think we can talk about a few solutions on this. Okay. Okay, so basically many different solutions on how you can solve this problem, or rather emulate, solve that issue you saw earlier on. Of course, spoiler in title, yes, we went with computing our own trigonometric formulas in SCSS. But let's talk a bit about why we didn't went with the other solutions. Okay, let's start with the first and very, very obvious solution. If you're hosting a web application, usually you have some image assets. So PNG files, JPEG files. If you have a moving image, you definitely will use something like GIFs. Okay, so Okay, so how do you implement this in your web application? Well, just make sure that you have the origin GIF file. Make sure you host the whole file somewhere. Let's say if you host it within a bucket, or maybe bundled together with your server application. If you're delivering it directly from there. And then within your HTML, just load the GIF asset, and basically that's it. You're done. Okay, so basically this is the result you should get. So right now within this, is in the slide that I'm sharing right now, is actually a web application. It's not a Google Slides. So this is using Review.js. And basically, the loading of this image that you see over here is basically what we are trying to solve. As long as you have the GIF, you just load it and this is what you get. Okay, but already from here, you might already start sensing that there are some problems here. Okay, but let's first talk about why we want to use solutions like this. Okay, the very clear-cut solution, or rather why we want to use this solution, is because it's plug and play. It's very simple. You have the image asset, you just reference it as part of an image tag in your site, and that's it, you're done. There's no additional engineering requirements towards getting this out. A very simple solution indeed. Okay, but why didn't we went ahead with a solution like this? One of the big things that we were discussing about within the team was that the file size of this GIF file was really, really big. And let me just show you. So this is when you load the site from the console, you can see that the actual file itself is 97.5 kilobytes. So if I compare this to, let's say in our case, we're writing our web application, our JavaScript, as well as other CSS assets, the size of those files were already comparable to this size or even smaller. So this means that to load a simple loader animation in our web application, we're actually sort of paying a larger price for that by having to load even more assets just for this simple thing. So it didn't felt like a very good solution because of that. Of course, you can play around with the balance by, let's say if you want to reduce the file size, maybe you can reduce the amount of frames in the GIF. But this would mean that you won't get a very realistic animation. It might look very ugly. For user experience, it may not be optimal. So again, not something that we want. Okay, and as with all images in web applications, resizing it's bad. You can of course use things like source sets to solve the problem, but this would mean now you need multiple image assets, each for each different size. And then admittedly, as a engineer, I have no idea on how I can use Photoshop. So if I need to be able to, let's say if I want to change the color, I have to go to my designer and ask them to, change it for me. And then now you have like all these additional steps to follow just to change, a simple asset in the page. Okay, so because of these reasons, we felt like this wasn't a good solution. Okay, so what other solutions are there out there for us to use? One other solution that our designers proposed to us was, why not use something like an animation library? Okay, so let me touch a little bit more on that. The idea is basically, instead of trying to engineer a solution ourselves, get the open source solutions or other solutions out there and use those solutions. Okay, so there's this library out there that's called Lotte Files. Essentially, they serve many different platforms. You can see over here at the bottom. There's plugins available for web, iOS, Android, Flutter, React Native, so on and so forth. So basically, you are able to add these plugins in different applications, and the idea is that you just need to use this Lotte Files, right, to generate a JSON representation of your animation, and then load both this plugin as well as that JSON file into your application. Okay, so that's exactly what, this is the methodology. Just create an animation, get a JSON file, load the library, load the JSON file in the web application, and it's done. Okay, so what exactly is it? So you can see over here, I have a CodePen widget over here. You can see that basically I'm doing exactly what I mentioned just now. I have a script asset, a script tag, loading the asset for the Lotte player, as well as the component itself based off this JavaScript file. So yeah, over here, I'm just loading the JSON file for this, and you can see over here that the animation, in fact, is quite nice. If you compare it to the GIF earlier on, it's actually, it looks more realistic. So it seems like already a better solution as compared to GIFs. Okay. Okay, so why would we want to go with this using an animation library like this? Okay, firstly, the one big thing just now that we mentioned about GIFs is the file size. Okay, the file size for this, take a look at this. It's really, really small. The JSON file is 1.2 kilobytes. Just now what we had was 97 kilobytes. So you can really see it's like a huge difference as compared to before. Okay, and similar to using a GIF, it's also simple to use. For the last solution, we are putting in the reference to that GIF asset. Over here, we are just referencing the JSON file itself. So it's not very complicated to implement within your web application. And one big thing that really appealed and stand out to us was that because we were rewriting the Soupy application to work across multiple platforms, not just the front end, but also for mobile applications. And because the design were very similar, the same loaded animation was used consistently. For the mobile devices, the mobile applications, they could use the same JSON file to emulate this animation. And then from web application standpoint, we can also reuse this same asset. So this already, it's a very big benefit for us. Okay, but obviously we didn't went with this solution, as mentioned again in the title. So why did we went that way? Again, like the GIF itself, you need some form of you need Photoshop, you need those skills to be able to create that animation. Again, this is some skill that I don't directly have, as well as the core engineering team we didn't have at that point. So there's still some reliance on the designer teams, to create these assets. Initialization cost. Initialization cost, here I'm referring to the JavaScript library itself, is actually quite high. So you can see over here that the minified file, it's actually for this JavaScript asset is 58 kilobytes. So compare this again to the GIF file earlier on, 97 kilobytes. It's kind of close in magnitude. So the thing over here is that if I'm only using this library for only one animation, it may not be actually worth it. We're not really using this for the economies of scale, but we are just doing it for one single animation. So it doesn't, and at the point of time, that was our only use case. So it didn't feel like a very prudent choice from there. Okay, so we didn't went ahead with this. Let's look at other solutions, or the solution that we decided to go with, engineering it ourselves. Why not? Let's do it in CSS and get that the final product out ourselves. So in the middle of work, I was looking up on this fun story lah. I was looking up in Wikipedia on trigonometry because it's been 15 years since my secondary school, high school, and I haven't touched on trigonometry for many, many years. So I was actually looking up on Wikipedia on studying up the topics again. And this caught the attention of my manager, who was asking me, why are you looking up on trigonometry? It's nothing to do with web development or backend or cloud. It was a very odd occurrence, but things like this do happen in our different workplaces. Okay, so let's look at the solution over here. How can we do it in CSS? Okay, so what we want to do over here, in fact, for a CSS-based solution, is implement that styling itself in your style sheets. And once you have the style configurations, load those style sheets into a web application. That should be it, right? It's a very, this is how we serve web applications nowadays. So this should be a very simplistic way, again, of how you can serve your solution. Okay, so let's break down the problem a little bit, okay? Because just now, as you saw the animation itself, okay, let me just scroll backwards to the animation and describe about this. Okay. Ooh. Okay, so let's break down this problem, this animation over here. If you want to do this in CSS, right, we can actually see this in 4 different parts. So if we break down this problem, okay, the first part, the most obvious part is the hexagon. We need to find some way to draw the hexagon in CSS. Okay. The second thing is animation. You need to be able to do some form of animation in terms of this rotation animation. Okay. Third problem is the hexagon of different sizes. Okay. We're not just looking at a hard-coded and static sized hexagon. We are looking at 4 different hexagons of 4 different sizes. And the same thing goes for animations. You need to cater for both a clockwise rotation as well as an anti-clockwise rotation. Although both of them are linear, so that property is the same. But yeah, different directions. We need to cater for that. Okay, so let's go back. Okay, so as I've mentioned, breaking down the problem, you get this 4 different perspectives or 4 different subsets of a problem over here. Okay, so let's look at each of these problems and see, which one is understand how we can solve each of them. I'm going to skip hexagon first because it's slightly complicated to do. The others are a bit more clear-cut. So rotation animation, if you search online, there are already guides on how you can do that. Basically, you just need to put in the proper configurations for the keyframes and get that done. Okay, so that's very simplistic. Hexagons of different sizes. Okay, assuming you are able to draw the hexagon, all you need to do is just use some CSS property to do the scaling of the size of a hexagon. And immediately you should be able to get your solution as well. So again, this is a simple problem. And the last subset of the problems, a clockwise and anti-clockwise rotation. So this is part of the problem for solving for animation. If you can solve for a clockwise rotation, you just need to reverse some of the properties. You should get anti-clockwise. So again, this is an easy problem to solve. So we end up with one last, like the bigger subset or this largest problem to solve, within here. How do you exactly draw a hexagon in CSS? I mean, drawing a square is simple. Drawing a rectangle is also simple. Just use a div, put the border, change to a different size is doable. Drawing a circle, using border radius, that's doable as well. But a shape of, regular more than 4 sides, right? It's actually not something that's intuitive to do. We actually came up with this solution. So there's actually a very quick way of doing this. If you want to draw a hexagon in using CSS, what you need to do, take a div, okay, and only draw the top and bottom borders, and then use the before a pseudo selector, rotate 60 degrees, draw the top and bottom, okay, and same for the after, but you rotate negative 60 degrees instead. So you should be able to get you should get all 3 of the top bottom rotated to the left, top bottom, and then the other way as well. So you should be able to get 6 sides directly from there. And because each of the sides just deviate away by each of the sides by 60 degrees, so that should already give you the final solution of being able to draw a hexagon. So is it really that simple though? Now that I'm mentioning it, that means we have solved the whole thing, right? But I did say that this is a solution in SCSS. Okay, so here's what exactly happened once we did this. So fun stuff in engineering, usually things doesn't go your way. Problem over here is that one thing that we learned is that we sort of had assumptions of that this shape is like a square. For a square, the length is equal to the breadth or the height width. So the idea of the hexagon is that actually that's not the case. I'm thinking that the height of the hexagon itself is equivalent to each of the sides, but because there's 6 sides, technically speaking, it should be shorter. So we need to find some way to compute and be able to draw, reduce the length of each of these sides and be able to compute, based on how big my hexagon is and get the proper length of each of these sides. Okay, so let's re-examine this hexagon. So this is the fun part about trigonometry. Hold your seatbelts. This is going to be a mathematical part. I'm just going to say, basically in trigonometry, there's the adjacent angle and there's also the 3 sides, basically your adjacent side, hypotenuse side, as well as the opposite side. So opposite is just opposite from the angle, adjacent, beside the angle, hypotenuse is the long side of this right angled triangle. Okay, yeah, this is only applicable to right angled triangles. Okay. Hopefully, some of you might start to have memories, hopefully good memories of this cheat code that usually we use in school called Tuakaso. So basically, this would represent the formula, the 3 different trigonometric formulas that we use to solve for trigonometry. So I'll touch on a little bit more on that later on. Okay, so now that we know that we need to do some form of mathematics in this solution, right, to compute each of the sides. We can't just do that in CSS. It's not supported in CSS at that point. So we need to use some form of compiled script to be able to do this. So in fact, you can do that if you're already using something like SCSS or using SAS essentially. Okay, so using an SCSS syntax. Okay, so how do you do this in SAS? Okay, so let's go backwards and look at the few trigonometric formulas again. Okay, Tuakaso, and let's try and see, try and fit together the formulas with our problem statement over here and see what formula we should use. Okay, so for tangent, right? Okay, tangent. So Tuakaso itself, again, the cheat code is basically T equals to tangent, and then O is opposite, A is adjacent, and then C is cosine over here. AH, yeah, is in very clear cut as well, adjacent, hypotenuse, and same thing for sine with opposite of hypotenuse. Okay, so basically the three formulas that you'll get over here is the tangent of the, over here you can see over here, the tangent of this right angled triangle over here, 30 degrees, is equivalent to the opposite side divided by the adjacent side. Okay, and okay, I'm not going to drone on this too much, but let me just pull out the other two formulas. So basically the entire thing of Tuakaso. Okay, so these are the three formulas that we have over here that we can apply on this right angled triangle. Okay, but what exactly, or which formula should we apply for this solution? You know, I mean, I can implement any of this, but we need to select the right one. Okay, so let's first look at this entire formula. If you look at the cosine formula, you can see that, okay, we know that we intend to implement the cosine function. We know this is a known value. The adjacent side, okay, adjacent side over here is also a known value because we know the height of our hexagon itself. Over here, what we are trying to do is to compute each of these sides over here, which is basically 2 of O. Okay, but the thing over here is that you can see that we have two knowns, and we have, so known number 1, known variable number 2. Hypotenuse is unknown, but the idea is that we're not trying to compute for the hypotenuse here. So let's kick out this solution, this one formula, because we know that definitely that's not going to get us the solution that we want. Okay, so now we have the tangent formula and sine formula remaining. Okay, let's compare these two formulas. So if you look at the sine formula, okay, so again, we want to implement the sine function. We will know this value. Opposite side is what we want. But again, hypotenuse side is also unknown. So if you have two unknowns on one side and one known variable on this side, you won't be able to compute this one of these unknown values. So this is something that likely wouldn't work really. Okay, so we have this one single formula remaining. So tangent of 30 degrees, this is a known value. Opposite side is what we want. The adjacent side is what we already know. Okay, so basically this should be able to get us to what we need. So we just need to manipulate the formula a little bit. You can see that you can actually compute the value of O directly from this formula. Okay, but this one would bring us to a further question over here. How do you exactly implement tangent function? So again, this is not supported in CSS today. If you have used SCSS before, you have used SAS before, right? You know that there's no functions for a sine formula, cosine formula, and tangent. So that's where like big problems again. How do you exactly implement this very, I guess, somewhat arbitrary formula that most of us probably wouldn't even touch on a day-to-day basis in code? Math time. This is Maclaurin series, Maclaurin expansion. I mean, basically you should be able to compute, let's say, the value of sine using this summation formula over here, where this would tend over to infinity. So x minus x here refer to the degree in radians, minus x to the power 3 over 3 factorial plus x to the power 5 over 5 factorial, so on and so forth until infinity. Okay, so I mean, there's some math formula itself. I'll touch on a little bit about the infinity portion later. We are not going to calculate to infinity, of course, because that would mean that our build process will never end. We will tend to like some limit. Okay, but this is actually something that we can use to solve our problem. Okay, to implement for sine formula. But some of you might be thinking again, you know, Wigan, I thought you were talking about getting a tangent formula over here. Like we need the tangent functionality, right? Why are we talking about the sine? So this is part of me when I was looking on how to implement the tangent function, where I found out that the implement tangent function is basically just you have to implement both the sine and cosine function, okay, to get it. So sine of a certain radian over cosine is equivalent to the tangent of that same angle. Okay, then now your second question might be, okay, so I know that it's a function, tangent is a function of sine and cosine, but that means I also need to compute cosine, right? It's again another like unknown that we have over here. So yeah, for those who are already catching on like to my drift over here, you can implement cosine with sine as well. So now it goes back to like the earlier, the comparison that we had. In fact, the idea is that the moment you implement sine function, you just need to change the parameters going into the function. You should be able to get the cosine function and then use that, both of these functionalities, to implement your tangent function. Okay, so this should get us to where we need to compute the opposite side. Okay, so let's dive in a little bit deeper about this to this formula itself. So how do you exactly implement this entire formula in SCSS in code, essentially? So if we need to break this down, right? Firstly, let's look at some of the portions of this formula over here. How do you calculate for factorial? Factorial is really simple. 3 factorial is essentially equivalent to 1 multiplied by 2 multiplied by 3. If it's 5 factorial, it's 1 times 2 times 3 times 4 times 5. Okay, 7 is again just the same thing, so on and so forth. So, I mean, if you're just writing this in code, it's a, like you can see over here in SCSS syntax, basically just a simple for loop with a start and end value, and then basically just loop all the way until you get to the end. Okay, you can actually see over here, usually for factorial, right, you're only concerned about the end value. So let me go back to the formula. You can see over here 3 factorial, we are only concerned on the last value, which is 3. Actually, we don't even concern ourselves with the first value. So actually, over here, in our factorial function, we actually optimize it a little bit by adding some starting value and some current value. So this was an optimization to allow us to not perform or recompute certain values again. Because if you go back and look at the formula, 3 factorial, okay, 3 factorial, we can't really pre-compute this beforehand, but we know that 3 factorial is 1 times 2 times 3, okay? 5 factorial, right, if I'm calculating, let's say I'm going through each of the loops for each of these values, right? The first loop, first iteration or second iteration itself, you'll get this value. The third iteration, you will get x to the power 5 over 5 factorial. And 5 factorial itself, actually, if you think about it deeper, right, it's actually just 3 factorial multiplied by 4 multiplied by 5, okay? And the same thing goes for 7 factorial. It's just 5 factorial multiplied by 6 multiplied by 7. So if I've already computed the result in the last iteration of this formula, why not I just use the same results and continue on the multiplication from there, okay? So that's what we did over here. We just allow the user to be able, or rather the formula itself, to implement and add in like some value that they can continue the computation at, and multiply like whatever current computed or aggregated value that we are also currently at, okay? So this will allow us to, make the build process a little bit faster. And that's why we did the same thing for the x to the power of some value. If it's x to the power of 3, you just need to use the last value and just multiply it by x to the power of 2 again, again and again for each of these iterations. Okay, so this is for optimization of power as well as factorial. Now, how do we implement this entire sign formula? I think that is also another interesting part. Boom, we have this entire. Okay, I'm not going to go through it line by line, but essentially the main portion from line 20 to line 37 is the entire formula itself. I have some corner cases from line 7 to line 17, which is essentially, if it's for some of y'all who are familiar with the trigonometric formulas, if it's at certain values, sine of pi or something like that, you'll be able to get either value of 0 or value of 1. So you don't really need to go through this computation, this iterative computation to get your results. In fact, you can just return these known values right away, okay? And you can actually see over here that on line 29, I have this value of sine iteration for this loop. So if I go back to this summation formula, you can see that this actually sums up to infinity. So I'm supposed to do this until infinity. But in the case of us, using this in a production setup, to generate our CSS styles configuration, what we found was that we just need to get to a high enough number such that the deviation itself is so small that you can't actually see it on any screen. So it turns out that the value of around 10 to 11 was actually big enough, or rather the deviation was so small that even if you have like a monitor at 4K size, right, the difference is 1 single pixel. So it's so small that you can't actually see it. So that's where we decided, okay, yeah, that's enough. We just need to get it to this a certain point where it's accurate enough to do this. Of course, if we need to update this in the future for even larger screens, we can do that. Okay, so this is how we solve it for sine. So as I mentioned, once you solve for sine, you get your cosine formula, which is basically a function of sine, and then you get back tangent, which is again based on sine and cosine. So almost happy ending. We have gotten most of what we have over here. Okay, and basically we have our tangent function. We can just use it to compute the value of O, which is half of each of the sides of the hexagon. Okay. So once we plug it in, you can see I actually have those the functions written over here for factorial, for sine, cosine, tangent, and then some of the properties for the the animations. Okay, you can see over here that basically I'm not all of this goes into computing for the hexagon class over here in the end, as well as in relation to the size to scale it up and down. Okay, and it's a lot more beautiful as compared to our the GIF, right, where you saw, sorry, not a GIF, the earlier solution where you saw that the length of each of the sides were jutting out, they were longer than expected. Okay, so this is exactly the result that we need. Okay, let's touch a bit. So I've talked about the entire solution for a very long time, but I want to talk a bit about the reasons, why should we use this? One big reason, it's a far cry from both the animation library as well as the GIF solution. The generated CSS, the minified generated CSS is just less than 1 kilobytes, 897 bytes. Far cry, a much better solution in terms of if you're concerned about file sizes overall. Okay, so this is a very, very good solution. Okay, but I've been asked, I've talked about this and discussed it a few times. Some people have actually asked me, why not use something like SVG? If you can generate the CSS properties for drawing this hexagon animation, why not implement it in SVG? And basically, SVG is our vector graphics. You should be able to have all those benefits of being able to generate it in CSS configuration, as well as not having the disadvantages of the GIF where you can't resize it properly, or rather when you scale it right, the resolution might go out of whack. So yeah, SVG actually it's actually quite a viable solution. Okay, fun fact over here, the SVG is used by 29.7% of all websites today. This is from W3Text. You can search for this online. Quite a widely used asset nowadays. So in fact, it's also doable. You just need to reuse the same formula to be able to get your sine, cosine, tangent, and be able to compute the values out from there. And you can see over here that this entire thing, there's not much. I'm not really implementing any CSS here. In fact, everything is done in this SVG configuration over here. You can see over here each of the 4 polygons for each of the hexagons, and animate transform tag over here for the property to do the animation. Okay, so this is also another viable solution. In fact, okay, again, this is a web application, the slides that I'm presenting on. So you can see that the SVG, when you put it here, it's quite good. I mean, in fact, I can scale it up and down. The resolution should not change. The resolution itself should be still quite clear. Okay, and if I compare it to the SCSS solution, you can see that it's even better in terms of file size, 704 bytes. So it's, again, very viable solution. But we didn't went with this because it felt like an additional build process that you need to put in. For SaaS, right? Most of us usually, or I would think that for most web developers, you will already have some form of build pipeline that goes around, running your compiling your SaaS into the CSS style sheets. But for SVG, right, this would mean you need to, as part of a build process, you need to put in some form of shell script to be able to implement your sine, cosine, tangent formula, and then use it to create the actual SVG asset. So this is something that not very widely use case today, and probably is going to create like more issues for you, and you can't reuse the code as well. So that's why we felt that it was still more suitable to do it in SaaS rather than creating your own scripts to generate this SVG file. Okay, another fun portion of me writing these functions. We have this sine function, cosine function, tangent function. Some of y'all might be asking, right? It seems like you're implementing this logic in SAS. And one of the things we don't ask about ourselves, mostly, right, it's when you're implementing CSS configuration is no one writes unit tests for CSS. It's like usually what happens is that you put a style in, it loads, it looks good, that's your validation. It's configuration. You don't test for configuration. But the problem here is that for SAS, you can write logic in, you can create functions, compute some form of result out. So there is some form of computation here, but it isn't actually kind of mainstream to do testing. So I was thinking to myself, actually, this is something that we really need to test for if we want to make sure that this code doesn't break, as our new developers join into a project and add in new functionalities, if they're reusing the sine function or fixing it. So that's something that we need to be concerned about. Okay, so just one more thing to introduce to you guys. You can search up on this library called True by this company called Oddbird. You can use their library to be able to run unit tests on your SAS code. Okay, so it itself is very simple. You just need to have some assertions. In this case, I'm testing my factorial function. with some expected result. Okay, so very simple, and yeah, should be able to run the test in your client, and basically you should be able to get the results if it's correct. If it's wrong, then you'll just get the failed results. Put this within your CI/CD pipelines, and basically you should be able to have a very robust system, like even for your SaaS functionalities and logic. Okay, so I'm going to end off soon. I just want to touch on a little bit more about trigonometry in CSS. So this one actually has been a long time in waiting. You can see over here, this is a screenshot of the GitHub page for the CSS working group. They actually talked about trigonometric functions being implemented. This is all the way in 2018. We're almost 3 years in now. Unfortunately, today, I believe it's still not supported. Like, I've looked around, there's no news on this. So it should come one day, but probably this is not something that's prioritized right now. But hopefully, yeah, as it comes in one day, we can be able to use this for different use cases, not having to implement it in your CSS style sheets, or maybe if you're using CSS in JS, not having to compute that in JS. Okay, I've reached the end of my sharing over here. So yeah, if you're interested in seeing like the full write-up of the entire thing of what we did, you can actually check out the Medium post over here. If you have more questions, you want to reach out to me on LinkedIn or GitHub, to just follow me on that link over there. And yeah, that's all I have. Okay, I'm going to take a look at the questions. Oh, hi, Eric.
Hi. Okay, good talk. A lot of brain exercise.
Yes.
I see a lot of comments are talking about math. Right. Let's go from the top. Okay, shall we?
Okay.
Eddie Go asks, is Lottie files free? I think it is, right?
Yes, at the point when I used it, it's free. Okay, so I'm looking at the page right now. Yes, it's still free. Free. They put there free animation library. Yeah. In fact, yeah, I didn't pay a single cent. Like just now when I'm gonna rotate this backwards. Okay, this entire thing is like basically the asset is all this is out there. The JSON itself, of course, you have to create it yourself. You can use their online editor, or I think Photoshop is also doable. So this at this point, I didn't pay any money to get this thing out. Yeah, this is free.
And just a question. My question: the JSON is essentially like a CSV file, right? But for Lottie files.
Yes.
How does it look like?
Let me see if I can just paste this here. Quick show. Yeah, it's basically just this. A lot of stuff that we don't understand, but I mean, this is not meant for us to create like manually lah. You have to use the their editor, or use Photoshop. I think there's some way to export it using Photoshop.
Interesting. Okay. Next question. What is this GDG? I'll answer that. GDG is a Google developer group, so we just share. We have talks, workshops, and conferences for developers and also non-developers, because it's not all just fully tech, right? So I think most of you that are here would probably already know, right? I don't need to explain too much. Let's see, what else do we have? Yeah, there's not a lot of questions. Kojun says at least no one started talking about math in BE yet. Maybe we should do a talk about implementing complex math in the BE.
This is actually quite fun, to be honest. When I did this, like usually you don't get a lot of this like very complicated stuff, like even more so for front end. But I think it's the beauty of it, like when you want to stretch your, like in our case, we want to optimize our application. We don't want to go for like GIFs and all that. This really was a very good like weekend exercise too. Like we did it over the weekend on our own. In fact, we didn't. This was not our company time, but it was really fun to bring this up as part of like side project.
I think like especially the web with web appearing on so many devices, right? So like those Nokia dumb phones could probably even run this if it's small enough.
Yeah.
Right. There's the KaiOS with the new KaiOS stuff.
As long as it supports the basic animation attributes, as well as the I think in this case, actually, there isn't really the generated CSS is basically just like calculated lengths of each of the site. It's even for old phones, you should be able to support most of these,
That's really cool. Mm,
including
I,
JavaScript, man.
I'm guessing there's not a lot of questions from the audience. Yeah, maybe if they actually have questions after this talk, they can contact you, right?
I'll hang around as
Yep.
well if you want to ask questions. I'll be like looking out for them.
Okay, cool. So maybe we can have our next speaker coming up. So, what happened here? So it's gonna be Jesselyn, with sorry, let me just adjust. Jesselyn with what's new in DevTools Experiment Edition. So Jesselyn, hello.
Yes, should I talk now? Am I
Yes.
live?
Oh,
Am I live already?
hello, and you're like, yeah.
Hi.
Hello,
Okay.
Jesselyn.
So I'm live, right?
Yep, you're live.
Okay. Hi, everyone. So my name is Jesselyn. I'm a developer advocate for Google Chrome DevTools. So today I'll talk about what's new in DevTools. But before that, thanks everyone for attending these sessions. And I hope you, because now it's like COVID situation, most of you probably work from home or stuck at home. But actually you are safe at home. So I hope you have some activities, try to relax yourself, don't work yourself too much. So this COVID situation have made me a better chef than I am. Previously, I don't cook at my house, but now I actually cook more than usual. So that's why I'm wearing apron today, even for the talk. Okay, so today I will talk about what's new in DevTools. Later on, I will share a video. Sorry, there's some problem with my laptop. That's why you see that there's something that keep popping up. Okay. Share a video on me speaking on the same topic. But today, what I will do is I will talk about what's new in DevTools, what are the new features that we created since last year. So maybe I will just summarize 15 features of that. And then I will talk about the 5 new experimental features that you can use for today. Okay, without further ado, let me click. Okay, so to summarize all the new features we released last year, I can summarize in 5 words, which is GREAT, which is great. Okay, so G of the great represent great tooling. So last year we have released great tooling. I'm not sure any one of you have started using. If you have, you can mention in the comment. Oh my god, this thing is annoying. Okay, so let me just share with you one of the demo. So let's say this is your web page, and then for this, let me just zoom in a little bit more on the code. Let's say now you have this main element, which is a grid, CSS grid, and then you just define the item to center. Now with the CSS grid tooling, you can actually you will see a new badge appear wherever there's a grid in your element. Then what you can do is you can toggle the grid badge, click on it, and then you will see that there's some highlight. There are some highlight in between here. Or let me just scroll down. So let's say the main is a grid and the container, the div is also a grid. Let me just turn that on as well. Then you can see that we actually show you how your grid is laid out. And furthermore, you can customize, you can inspect your grid in the layout panel. This is the new panel that we have, the layout pane. So in here, what you can do is you can say, I want to see the line names, for example. So let's say in this case, let me zoom in more. So in this case, I actually name my names. I have put in different names for my line. Then it can actually show it. Or if I don't want the label, I can just say I hide the label so that you don't see the label. And then this name you see here, banner, sidebar, and content, is basically the area name that are assigned to each grid area. So if I toggle it, then you couldn't see it. Or if I just enable that, you can see it. And so, for example, if you want to know what are the size of this track, you can actually click and enable that. then it will show you like how much, what is the size of the grid. So you can see now the size is running a little bit because I zoom in my tab. So you can see here, it will show you the 1FR and then it's 96.66 px. Or you can even extend the grid line to make it longer so that you can sometimes you just want to zoom and align the item. You might want your grid line to show a slightly longer. Okay, so these are some of the features that you can use to debug your grid. And then another one more little details that we have is when you start to animate your grid and then you stop. Sorry, my PC is really slow. So you can see that the label actually will rotate accordingly as well. It won't like, so if you totally rotate like 180 degrees, it will still show accordingly. It's not show upside down. Okay, so this is the first feature. So try it out and let us know what you think. The second features that we have is, okay, is the rendering tab. So we have put in a bunch of new feature in the rendering tab and the sensors tab. So the first one I want to introduce you is the locations emulation. So you can use DevTools to emulate location, to emulate your locale. So for example, I have this page here. Let me just turn off the. So in this page, I mentioned that I have a cooking class last year, December 24, 12 p.m. Asia, Kuala Lumpur time. So let's say this class, I want to have audience from Japan. I want to have audience from Germany. So I want to display the time and the date according to their time zone. So when I do development, how can I test? Test to make sure that the times actually show up as per the local time accordingly. So what I can do is I can use the emulate locale features to actually test that. So how do you you can go to more options, more tools, and then go to the rendering tab, and then sorry, it's the sensors tab, more tools, and the sensors tab. And when you click here, you can, let's say, change the location to Tokyo, for example, and then refresh the page. So you can see now my time is changed to Tokyo time. So because Tokyo is 1 hour after Malaysia time, so it will show that the time zone is Asia Tokyo and it's 1 p.m. their time. So if it's London, let us try, and then we refresh. You can see that it's actually 4 a.m. and the time zone is Europe, London. So it's actually very handy for you to do the testing of your website, especially if your website support multiple language and multiple time zone. The next features that I want to talk about is the emulate inactive users feature. So let's say, imagine that you are developing a rice ordering kiosk. So you are developing a web page, but for a kiosk. So in this particular case, it's a kiosk for rice ordering because I like Uncle Roger. Okay, so you can see that now I display a list of menu where people can click add to cart. So what happened is wherever you go to a kiosk, right? Imagine that you go to a kiosk, when there is no one ordering thing, you don't show the menu. You actually show a slideshow of what are the promotions that you currently have, and then to entice the user to order that. So in this case, what you can do is we can try to detect whether the screen is active, whether the user is active or whether the user is idle. Then you will redirect them to the promotion page or you redirect them to the order page. So Chrome have a new API to do so, but with Chrome DevTools, you can actually test that API. So let's say now, if I go to more tools and then the sensors tab, scroll down, you can see there's a emulate idle detector state here. So now my state is user active and the screen is unlocked. So what happened if I want to set to what happened is, because I have written my code in that way that if the user is idle and the screen is locked, I want to redirect them to the promotions page. So if I change to this one, then you can see that now the screen will auto redirect to the promotion page. And then if so if you want to know about the idle detector on the code on how to write that, I have an example here. Later on, I will share the link on how you can do that. So idle detector is a new API to do what I'm demoing here. So let's say now the user user is active and the screen is unlocked. Then we'll redirect them back to the rice ordering page. So you don't need to actually wait, because for the screen, imagine that now you are developing this web page, and then you need to wait for 60 seconds to wait for your actual device to actually lock and unlock. It will take a lot of time and for you to test that. With Chrome Dev 2, you don't need to wait. You just need to emulate the state and then test the function. Okay, then the next feature that I want to talk about is emulate the prefers reduced data. So in the CSS now, the CSS actually support a media query called prefers reduced data. So when prefers reduced data mode is on, then you might want to load slightly lighter data. For example, in my case, I have this hash one. This is the hash one using the font family rice, or you will fall back to Arial if the rice font is not loaded. So when the user is in prefers reduced data mode, So when the user have prefer reduced data, no preference, when they have no preference, which means I can load wherever I want, then I will try to load the rice font to display the font. So if let's say the user is in data saving mode, then what I will do is I will not put in this rice font file to load that. I will just use the basic Arial file, the Arial font, to display the content, so that it saves user a little bit of data. So this is one of the way you can use this prefers reduced data media query. So in order to test that, you can use Chrome Dev 2 to test that. So what you can do is go to the rendering tab, more tools, go to the rendering tab, and then in here, we have this emulate CSS media feature prefers reduced data. Now is no emulation. So let's take a look again. Let me just go to here. This hash one. Okay. So if I am if I just turn on prefer reduce data is reduced, you can see that the font actually updated actually using the Arial font, because we say that we don't want to load the rice font file. If I turn back again, then it will actually download the font file and then load it. So this is the last features of the R in rendering that I want to introduce to you. So move on to the next features. The next group of features that new features that we have is, I have some problem with my laptop. That's why you see that I click, but actually nothing happened. I actually want to go to the next page. Okay. Wait, sorry. Okay. Yeah. So the next group of features I would like to introduce is the Elements panel. So one of the most used panel in Chrome Dev 2 is the Elements panel. That's why we have a lot of new features that we added in for the Elements panel. So one of this is if you are using, if you are writing your code in React.js or Svelte, then you might have used some CSS in JS framework to write your CSS. Previously, so the CSS in JS code might look something like this. Let me just zoom in. So you might have a bunch of CSS code, but you written in JavaScript, and then you have your then you will add to your CSS in JS framework, something like this. So when you do that, previously, if this is the code, you can't use DevTools, the style panel. So in here, usually you can just edit your style and then see in real time what is happening. But previously, if the code is CSS in JS, you can't do that. But now, since the release Chrome 86, you can do that. So let's say I just run the code here to add animations to this egg. Now, if I go to the egg, just select one of the egg. Okay. Now I see this. This is the code. It's showing constructed style sheet, which means it's the code that we add using CSS in JS. Previously, you can't edit this, but now you can edit it. So it makes it easier for those who use CSS in JS framework, especially for those who use React. Yeah. And the next feature is we also add in a new button here. If you do notice, it's called computed style sidebar. So for example, previously when you want to resize your Chrome DevTools panel, when you resize slightly bigger, what we'll do is we'll show the style pane and a computed pane side by side so that you can see the computed pane. But in the latest release, we actually removed that. So when you resize, you will always see the styles pane. But what we do is we added a button here for you to toggle the computed sidebar pane. So in here, you can always, so no matter what you resize, it's your choice now whether you want to show the computer sidebar pane side by side, or you just want to close it and then view the computer pane in here. So, but if you show side by side, it's especially good for those big screen users because you want to have a one-page view of what is happening in your style and just edit it and see what is happening. So try that out. Hope you like it. And the next features I want to introduce is this group checkbox. This is a new checkbox that we add. So previously when you scroll all the computer properties, what you can see is a list of properties that there is that's related to the element. But sometimes you might want to group them according to what is their usage. So for example, now let's say I'm working on animations. What I care about is all the animation property. So what I can do is after I group, it will have a label here. So I can just scroll down and just focus on the animations property and just to observe that what is happening instead of try to search and look for all the others unrelated properties. Okay. And the last one for these elements, new features, is the capture node screenshot. So previously, you can capture element node screenshot. So for example, I want to take a screenshot of all the egg here. What I can do is previously, there is a shortcut in DevTools, but you need to click on Command-Shift-P, and then you pull up this command panel, and then you type screenshot. Or capture node screenshot, for example. Then it will take a screenshot. But this is an old feature, and probably not many of you remember what is the shortcut to trigger this command menu. So what we do here is now we added a new shortcut. What you can do is you just right click and then select capture node screenshot, and then we will capture the screenshot for you. Just to prove the screenshot is working. Then you see all the eggs here. Okay, so this is a handy feature to help you to take a screenshot. Okay, next let's talk about accessibility. Okay, so let's talk about accessibility. So Chrome DevTools also add in quite a few enhancements on the accessibility. So one of it is something we call the inspect mode tooltip. So for example, now if let's say I just go to this debug, this example here. Okay, let inspect. So when you can inspect an element by clicking on this this icon and then try to inspect it. So when you inspect now, you see that we added a bunch of new refer to the accessibility section. So we added in some of the role and whether this element is keyboard focusable to help you better debug the accessibility features of your page. So this label is quite helpful for those of you who want to have a quick view on whether your elements, you have assigned an appropriate role for it and whether it's keyboard focusable. Okay, another new features that we added in for the accessibility is the color contrast. So for example, in this page, some of you might notice, some of you might not notice. So this, we have this line 1. So the color of this text is dark gray. The background color of this text is pink color. And the second one, the color is lime, and then the background color is yellow. So if you have normal visions, for people that have normal vision, this might look okay for you because you can still see the text, right? There's no problem. But this text actually have very low color contrast. So how do I know, as a person with normal vision, how do I know whether this text has low color contrast? So what we can do is, in DevTools, we added in a features to help you better visualize this problem. So we add in a new features. You go to More Tools and Rendering. Scroll down. We added in features called Emulate Vision Deficiency. So with Emulate Vision Deficiency, we help you to emulate different type of vision deficiency. So you can see, so for example, protanopia is the inability to perceive red color and green color. Let's say I turn on this, I emulate this to protanopia mode. Now, when you debug the website, when you look at it now, you can see that this text is basically very unreadable. So you can try to turn on different, try to debug different type of vision deficiency. Try to use that in your development and use that in one day to feel and then to check whether your website, the color contrast is okay or is not okay. It's very good for you to visualize this problem. Okay. Another tools that we add in to help you better figure out whether your text have color contrast issue is we add in a one-click fix for you. So for example, for this line 1, we have this color and background. If you click on it, previously you can also see the contrast ratio. We are showing red error here. So it's telling you that the color contrast is too low. So it's very low for both AA standard and AAA standard. So what you can do, what we add in here is we can help you to auto fix the issues if you click on it. So we auto suggested you, for example, this color. So if you click on it, see the color is fixed now. So later on you can copy this this line color and then update it in your source file. Okay, and then there's one more features. We call it CSS overview. So because now let's say in my page, so let's say now in my page, I have 2 color contrast issue. I don't want to, what I want to do is I don't want to like just go and inspect one by one and go and check, click in and check whether it's a contrast ratio issues. It's very tedious. So what you can do is you can use the CSS overview tab. So this is a tab you can enable. It's experimental. Later on I'll tell you how to enable that. So in the CSS view overview, you can click capture overview, and then in here go to the color section. So we'll just when you run this CSS overview, it gives you an overview of your CSS of your whole page, and that will tell you how many color contrast issues that your page have. So for example, in my page here, I have 2 color contrast issue. Then it will show me 2 issues. So what I can do is I can click on here and then click on go to the element, or click on the element to go to the style elements panel and to fix that. So this CSS will actually save you some time to find the issues that you have for your color contrast. So it's very handy. Okay, so that's the A part. So the last letter is the T. So in Chrome DevTools, we also introduced many new tabs and many new panels, a few news panels to help you better debug your website issues. So for example, one of the new tab that we added is the issues panel. So let me toggle the issues panel, or maybe let's say just go to YouTube, for example. Do I have something in? Okay, so let's say in YouTube here, if you go to your console now, it's close. So if your website have some issues that you need to fix, DevTools now in the console tab, you see that there's some message here tell you that, oh, there's some issues. And then last time we actually just append all the issues in your console, make your console very hard to navigate because we just push in a bunch of issues there. Maybe it's your issue, maybe it's third-party issues, but it makes you very hard to debug your website for your real issues. So what we do now is we create an issues tab, and then we move all the issues and warning for the browsers in the issues panel. So what you can do is you click on this view issues, go to the issues, and then now we actually group these issues and tell you what happened and how you can fix it. So for example, here we show that you have 12 issues, and then these 12 issues is all related to the same site attribute. So just expand it. It will tell you what is the problem and then how you can resolve it and what are the resources. What are the resources that actually cause this issue? So there are 12 cookies that cause this issue and 2 requests. So for web developer, maybe this might not be relevant to you, but you might have some security or network expert that can fix these issues. Then what you can do is you can also learn more. We also provide some resource for you to learn more about what is these issues about. Okay, so this is the issues tab. Moving forward, there will be more issues and more errors that will be moved to this issues tab on case-by-case basis. Okay, the other new tabs is a tab that can help you to debug media issues. So it's a good news, especially for those people who work on video player or stream or music player. So let's say just go to this page. I have a video on this page. So how do I know whether there's a drop frame happen? So what is really happening in my video? Maybe it's my buffering have some issues or what. So previously, in order to debug that, it's slightly harder. But now with the new Chrome DevTools media tab, you can actually debug that easier. So let me just go to more tools and then pull out the media tab. So in the media tab here, we show all the players in the page. So the player will only start if you start the video. So let's say now I start the video. Now you see that the new player is showing up here. Then it will show you what is the properties of this video, what's the resolution, what is the playback frame decoder, and what's the audio decoder, whether there's a few text track for subtitle, and what's the event that emit by the video player, on if there's any message log messages, and the best one is the timeline. So here it will show you the real-time playback status and buffering status. Let me just play the video and then I pause it. You can see that the video state is updated online. So if I pause it again, you can see that the timeline is updated to pause. And then if I played it again and then I just drag it, you can see that the buffering status is actually happening. So it will tell you the buffering is happening between what duration to what durations. So this is very useful if you are working on developing the media player. Any one of you are media player developer here? So good for you if you don't know this feature yet. Okay, make your life easier. Okay, and then another features that I would like to introduce is the previously when you open this tab, right? So in Chrome DevTools, there are let me just, so if you, let's say I just pulled out the rendering tab. Just now I show you rendering tab, right? So for example, so you might be wondering sometimes why the rendering tab is showing below and the elements tab is showing on top. So what if I want to move my rendering tab to the top? I want to view the, let's say, a rendering tab and the console tab together. So now what I can do is I can actually move the panels up and down as I want. So for example, let's say again, I want to view the elements panel and the lighthouse panel in one page. So previously I cannot do so because both of them are in the top panel. So what I can do now is I can right click on any of the tab and then I click move to bottom to move the panel to the bottom. So this way I can view any tools panel that I want to view in the same page. So now I can actually move back to the top or move any panel to the top. Yeah. So this is another new features that we have. Okay, so that's all for the current features that I want to introduce. So next, let's talk about the experimental feature. Oh, before I talk about that, any questions? Eric, any questions from the floor
Okay.
regarding of the new current features that we have?
Let's see. There are a few. Let's start with this one. Is it possible to set the time offset like GMT +2 without the present location and changing system time? I think
So
there is, right? There's other.
Yep. So just now, let's go back to the sensors tab. So if you go to more tools and you go to the sensors tab, so this location is basically emulate your location, your locale, and then you can set what's the locale, what's the time zone ID. So let's say in this list, right, you don't find the time zone that you want, you can actually click manage, and then you add your own locations. So you can add your own location. I think Manila is not here, then you can add Manila. And then the latitude and longitude, I do not know. The time zone ID also, I do not know. But if you have, you can actually basically add that to test that. Then you don't need to change your system time and date in order to test that.
Okay. Another question is can show in real iPad. I think this one means the
emulation.
The emulation for lock
Yeah.
screen, right? Active.
Okay. Yeah. So for in Chrome DevTools, what you can do is you can toggle the device toolbar, and then from here there's a list of preset device that you can test on. But it's actually just what the test is it will show you the iPad size and the iPhone X size and the Pixel 2 size. So it but it doesn't, some of the features actually doesn't emulate. So for example, in your iPhone, there are a new image format we call WebP, or there's a new image format we call AVIF. So these are the two new image format that support in Chrome but doesn't support in iPhone. So you can use these features to test the image, whether it show up nicely in the viewport. But if let's say you want to test the format of the image, you need a real device to test it, because in Chrome here, you will still see the image, but in fact, in your real device, in your real iPhone device, you might not see it because in your real iPhone device, it doesn't support that image format. Yeah, but it's very handy, these tools, for you to test different size, and then you can actually rotate it. And then one more tricks that you can do here, maybe some of you know, some of you doesn't know, is you can show the device frame. So to make it more like a real iPhone. Yeah.
Oh,
okay.
I did not know that.
Okay.
Another question. Does the media console work for audio players?
That the media console work for what player?
Audio players. So the video thingy, the rendering, buffering.
Yes, I think it's all the media player. So SoundCloud. Let us go to SoundCloud. Okay, let me see if I have. Or Spotify, but I did not log in Spotify. Okay, yeah, you can test that out. So the feature is already rolled out. I don't need to show here, but I think is yes. Yeah.
Yep. Okay, so that's a yes. It worked. So
yeah.
I think that's no other question.
Oh,
Looks
no
like
other
it.
questions.
Yep.
Okay. So there are 5 experimental. There are a lot of experimental features that we currently experimenting and developing, but these are the 5 that I think is quite useful and maybe will get you be more excited in Chrome DevTools. So the first one is okay. My slide doesn't make me feel excited. Okay, the first one is the Flexbox debugging tool. So just now in the layout panel, I showed that we have the grid debugging tools. We added in that. Then there's a lot of people asking us, so when will you support Flexbox debugging? So now it's here, but you need to turn on the experimental flag in order to use that. So for this Flexbox, how do you turn on experimental feature is you go to this setting button here, and then click on experiment. And then what you can do is you just scroll down and then try to find the Flexbox debugging feature. oh, sorry, this is the, so for all these new features that I'm talking about, right, you need to use the Canary versions of Chrome. So if you see my laptop, so Chrome, we have Google Chrome, the stable version, which the user usually use. But as a developer, you can install the other versions of Chrome, which is the Chrome Canary. So for Chrome Canary, every day we'll do a new build and we'll do a new feature release to the Chrome Canary. So if you would like to test the latest features, you can actually install Chrome Canary. So let me just test the features in Chrome Canary. Okay, what is that? Go. Okay, I have some issues with the rendering. Never mind. Let's just move it. So wherever I do presentations, live presentation, there's a lot of technical issues showing up. When I don't do presentation, there's nothing showing out. So let me just turn on one of the flag. By the way, this is not a Chrome DevTools issues. This is a GPU rasterization issues. Let me just restart it. And then start again. So wait a moment until my what happened? Okay. Please don't do this to me in life. Okay. Okay. Okay, let's do this. Okay. So let's say in this page, I want to debug the CSS, the Flexbox. So what I do is click on the settings and then go to the experiments tab here, and then try to find the enable new CSS Flexbox debugging features. So once you enable that, you refresh the page, and then you can see here it's similar to the Flexbox debugging. We added in a new Flex badge here to help you toggle and debug your Flexbox. So for example, my navigation bar is actually a Flexbox. So so what you can do here, what you see here is we say justify, we put it justify the content to be space between, so that it have a white space in between these two elements. So it's side by side. So so one of the features that this Flexbox debugging tool have is it can now help you to visualize what exactly is the space between, what exactly is flex end. So for example, just now space between, you can see the new icon that we added in here, basically tell you that, oh, so the space is slightly far away. So if I want to put space around, so the space is slightly closer. If you want to put space even, so basically we give you some hints on how it will look like in your screen. So it's easier for you when you select and try to edit the properties. And another thing that I want to show you is the so this icon that I show you is actually context aware. So what do I mean by context aware? So in Flexbox, what you can do is you can set the flex direction. Let's say I want the direction usually is a row, but let's say now I set the direction to column. So it will always show the flex column direction. So now if you go back to your space between, let me just remove it. So now you go back to the space between. Do you notice that the icon actually changed as well? Previously, it would show like a row-based space between, but now it's actually rotate to follow your flex direction to show in the column view, and then it's space between. So it's context aware, so it makes you easier if you want to work with your grid and work with your Flexbox. And then we also add in the layout as well. So in the layout, you can see that you can select. So in this page, I have two Flexbox overlay here. You can actually toggle both of it, and then or when you debug it, you can actually change the navigation. You can actually change the color of the line. So if you want to show like different color, you can actually do so. You can actually do that for the grid just now as well, just that I didn't show you. But it's actually very handy, and you can just click and then jump to the Flexbox badge that you want to debug. Just click and then click on it, and then show the Flexbox badge. Okay, so try it out. So this is the first feature I want to talk about. The other features that I want to talk about is the customized keyboard shortcut. So we receive a lot of queries or a lot of people that say that, oh, can I customize the keyboard shortcut because I have my preference when I want to copy a certain thing or when I want to perform certain action, I have my own preferred keyboard shortcut. But in DevTools previously, you always need to use what we have set. You cannot set your own, but now you can. So, but what you need to do is same, go to the settings, experiment. What you need to do is you need to turn on. So this enable keyboard shortcut here. Let me just open my screen bigger. So there's two type of experiment, you see. So there's one type of experiment. We just show you that this experiment could be unstable and unreliable. And then there's the bottom part. This experiment is particularly unstable. So it's very dangerous for you to use. So, but if you want to try it out, you just enable it. So the keyboard shortcut editor is basically under here because it will impact quite a bit of your other shortcut probably. So you just enable that and then you refresh your DevTools. And then what you can do is you go to the shortcut. Now you can edit. So we will show an edit button here because just now I already enabled that. And then you can edit the shortcut. So for example, to clear your console, previously you can click Control L or Command K. So let's say now I want to edit it. So I want to clear, I want to put like, if I want to clear my console, I want to put, let's say, let me just delete it. I want to clear my console with Control Z, Control S, for example, Control S. So if this shortcut is used, then it will tell you that, oh, you cannot use this shortcut because it's used by some other function. So never mind. Then I say that, never mind. So this is someone already used this, right? Then I will say Control S1. Control S and Command S and okay, wait. Let me just put it. Command 7. Okay, so no one used Command 7. Let me just clear the console with Command 7. So I will just save it. Command 7. So now we go to the console, type something in. Okay, then now I type Command 7, it will clear. But you cannot see that I click Command 7, but I actually type that. So use the Command 7 to clear it. And even better is that in your shortcut here, we support multiple chord. So which means, so just now, the first example that I showed. So what is multiple chord? So in, for example, in your code editor, like Visual Studio Code, for example, sometimes you might have, you want to support multiple chords. So for example, only clear the console when user type Command C and Control S. Command C and Control S. Okay, let me just type it. Command C and Control S. So this one is this command will only execute if the user type in Command C and Control S. So this is the multiple chord. So you can set single chord or multiple chord based on what based on your preference. So you no longer need to just follow the shortcut that DevTools provide. So it's a pretty handy new features. Okay, next one. Okay, next one is something we call the new advanced perceptual contrast algorithm, APCA. We call it, in short, we call it APCA. So previously, just now, you remember when I showed you the contrast ratio, the standard that we usually use to see whether a certain color contrast is up to the standard, we are using AA and AAA standard. We are using the AAA and AA standard to evaluate whether this this color contrast is acceptable or not. But there's a new advanced algorithm that we can use. Now it's called APCA. So what is APCA? Okay, where is my slide? So for the so color contrast, so to detect whether a certain color is up to a acceptable contrast ratio, it depends on not just the color itself. So previously in AA and AAA, it just purely depends on color, but APCA actually take in like your environment and your some of the surrounding color in order to do the calculations of the algorithm. So it gives you a percentage of whether it is up to the color contrast ratio standard. Okay, so let me just show you an example. Okay, so go to the settings, go to the experiment, and then here, so you enable the new to replace the APCA to replace the AA and AAA guideline. So in here, if I go to my, let's just go to my demo, my anchovy demo just now. Okay, so for example here, if you click on this one, the text here, go to the style pane, scroll up, click on the color. Here, instead of showing you the AA and AA standard, we are showing you the APCA. It's calculated using the APCA. And then same thing, what we do here is we will show you the line here. So if you select above, which means the color is still not up to the standard, but if you select below the line, means that the color is acceptable, the contrast ratio is acceptable. Okay, and then it will tell you that how much the APCA calculation is. Okay, you can read more about APCA in our website. Later on, I will share the slide as well. So you can go to the website and learn more about how this algorithm is calculating the color ratio. It's quite interesting to read. Okay, and the next features, the next experimental feature, just now I kind of show it already. It's the CSS overview. So this whole CSS overview panel is experimental. So for you to enable that, go to the experiment and then scroll down here. You can see CSS overview, enable that. Then you can run capture CSS overview. Then what it will tell you is how many element is in your page, how many rules do you have, how many IDs do you have. So if you want to have a one page view of what are the color that you use in the page, here will show you all the colors you use in the page. So you can just copy, and then especially for designers, it's actually very handy for you to see whether certain color is not part of your company color and you want to change that, it gives you the view. And then what's more is it will show you what are the font that you are using. So in here, you see that I use so many fonts, but usually your web page maybe don't have such many fonts like Time, Rubik, and others. And then what are the unused declaration that probably you really don't use it and you can remove it. But in this case, I don't have. But if you have, then it will show you the list. Then you can see that whether you want to, whether it's really unused and you can remove it. So you can save some bytes to improve the performance. Okay, so this is the CSS overview panel. Try to run it on your website and see the result. Okay, the last one is recorder. So this is a very interesting features. So last time, if you have used Microsoft Excel, for example, what you can do is in Excel, there's a function called macro. What you can do is you can record the actions that you perform on the page, and it will try to save it. And then later on, you can replay the actions that you perform. So in Chrome DevTools, we have added in something called a recorder features to help you do something similar. So again, go to your experiment tab and then go and find, or not this one, sorry. You need to use the Canary version because it's not yet in the stable version. Go to the experiment and then you can see a recorder features here. Enable that. So let's say now what I want to perform later is, this is especially useful if you want to create some test script for your page. You want to automate the test script. So for example, now what I want to test is, I want to test when I go to jack.fyi, I want to go to this web page. I will click this DAG slide link, and then I want to go to the first presentation. And then in the first presentation, I want to toggle the mode of the page. So I want later on, I want to create an automated script to perform exactly that step. So from the main page, go to DAG and then select the first presentation and then click on and then toggle the theme. So what I can do is, I don't need to hand coded the code myself. I can use the source panel to do that. So let me just, in your source panel, there's a few tabs here. We added in a new tab called recording. You need to enable here, it from here, go to the recording tab, and then you can click on add recording. So let's say now I just name this properly. So just call it test.js, for example. So in here, I can say that let's start recording all my actions here onwards. So I just click record. So now you can see that it's actually append some of the code, Puppeteer, and then launch the browser, and then open a new page, and then go to jack.fyi, which is my page. Good. The next action I want to do is I want to click on the jack.fyi/stack, this link. So you see that when I perform this step, what it append here is it say that, oh, please wait, target.man, go to the frame, and then wait for the selector using the area to select the URL, and then click on the URL. And then you see that there's this extra code here. Later I explain why, because this is the way that I write my code. So because every time when I redirect, when I do a redirection on my page, I will actually do a checking on the site color, so the color toggle, so you see that, but it's actually just a checking. Anyway, so now if go to this page, I will click on the first presentation. Okay, so after go to the first presentation, you see the code append again. So it will say that do the same thing again, create a const, and then say the element is wait for someone to click on this what's great in that the link with this area name, and then click on that, and then go to this page. Now click on this one, so it will toggle the color. Okay, so then you see that it's actually append another line of click on the image toggle. So what I can do now also, this is the code that I want to run, automate later. So I just stop the recording. And then that's it. So this is your script. So what I can do here, it will just show you all the code that you need. So what I can do here, I can delete whatever code that I don't need, the extra code that I don't need. Because maybe maybe there's some backend JavaScript that you run like I have just now, so that you can remove those code that is auto running. So just preserve all the steps that you want. And then let's say here you want to say that console.log, you want to assert whether the URL of the page. Assert your page.url, page.url is equal to this URL, for example. So now you have done your script. So remember that this script, we are using Puppeteer. If you haven't heard of Puppeteer, Puppeteer is basically a Node.js library, which you can search from, you go to NPM if you are using Node.js. So in the NPM, you search Puppeteer. So this is a library, open source by Google, in order for you to perform browser testing. So you can, whatever thing that you can do with Chrome, you can do with Puppeteer, using code. So for example, here, if you require the Puppeteer, then it will just say that, please launch a browser for me. So Puppeteer.launch will give you a browser. Then if you want to create a new page, imagine that you are manually create a new page, and then go to a certain page. Imagine that you are typing on the address bar to go to a certain page and then take a screenshot. You can use Puppeteer to perform all this action to automate your browser testing, for example. And Puppeteer actually can run in not just Chrome, but Firefox as well. I have another talk recorded in YouTube, which you can watch. Or I actually talk about what are the features that's available for Puppeteer. So it's a very interesting library. So the code that we generated here is basically based on Puppeteer. So in order to run this, you cannot run in the browser now. So, but what you can do is you can save this file. You can save as, You can just save as any folder of your in your page in your computer, and then just run it. So let me just set this to test3.js, for example. So once I save that, I can actually run it using my Node.js library. Okay, just open my command line here. And then I cd to my code folder. And then in the code folder, I will just run puppet here test3.js. Wait, what is the command that I'm written? Okay, let me just open the file. Oh, not the code folder. That's why I need to cd to the recording folder. Okay. And px. Recording folder. Let me just open it in here. So test3. So in this project, I actually installed the Puppeteer. That's why I can run Puppeteer. Okay. Yeah, you can just test it. Install it, and then follow the instruction on how you can run Puppeteer. Okay. Okay. That's all for my presentations. Okay. So for the Chrome DevTools team, we actually have Chrome DevTool engineering blog as well. So if you want to follow us to learn how we actually develop Chrome DevTools. So for your information, for those of you who doesn't know, Chrome DevTools, like this DevTools, is basically just a web application. It's developed using HTML, CSS, and JavaScript to help you debug your CSS, HTML, and JavaScript. But basically, this whole thing is a web application and it's open source. You can just go and see our source code online. But if you want to understand, if you are interested on how we develop certain things, so for example, how we actually migrate our code from JavaScript to TypeScript, I think that some of you, that your project might also migrate JavaScript to TypeScript. We actually have an article to share with you how we actually migrate that. And imagine that Chrome DevTools, the source code, the JavaScript, is gigantic and it's 10 plus years old, over 10 plus years old. So you can imagine how much effort that we use to actually do the migration. So there might be some insight that you can learn from there. So go and check out our engineering blog or follow our Twitter to follow the latest, to know the latest update. So that's all. So if you want to, so this is the page for the slide and the top. And if you would like to follow me in Twitter or Facebook, you just look for the name. So this name, I think, is pretty unique, Jocelyn Yin. So you can search me up. Thank you.
Thank you, Jocelyn. So yeah, I just, there's a lot of quality of life improvements, right, to the dev tools, like the shortcuts and stuff. And I can't help but to notice that Puppeteer went from like this very small library, and then I remember they added a website, puppeteer.dev, and then it turned into a Chrome extension, and then now it's part of the DevTools itself.
Yes.
Yeah,
and
that's really cool.
Yeah, so I think the vision, the goal of the DevTools is to help make your life, developer life, easier to debug your site, and then give you insight of how you can improve your website. So this is what we'll continue doing. And if you have any ideas on how to improve, or you think that there are certain features that should be part of Chrome DevTools, just ping me on Twitter. Yeah.
Okay, let's go to the questions. We only have one question.
Okay.
I think, okay, this is the one about the iPad.
Oh, okay. This thing?
Yeah, I think Ken meant that because there's the toggle, right, to see if the screen is active or not. something like that.
I don't understand the question.
Hmm.
You mean just now the idle detector?
Yes.
Okay. Yes.
Yes. I think that's what he's talking about.
Yep. So what is the question?
How does sorry. Okay. So how does the iPad trigger it when it is locked? So how does it actually work on the actual physical machine?
Okay. So this idle detector actually you need to enable, because this is features that will that need user permission specifically, just like your notification and stuff like that. So when you enable this idle detection features, and then so since then when you need to enable, the user need to enable it. So let's say you deploy it to your kiosk, right? You need to enable it as well in order for you to use. And then for this idle detector, there's a event listener, there's an event hook that you can listen to it. So for example, you will just listen to the change event. So wherever there's a change, then you can retrieve the screen state or the user state. So you can check whether the screen is locked or the user is active or non-active, and then you will do certain actions. So basically, this is how you can use this API. This API is still pretty experimental. So I don't think I need to check whether it's support in all the platform yet, but it's definitely on Chrome OS and Mac OS. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
There's one more question from Chang Koklip. So how long did Chrome DevTools team took to migrate from JavaScript to TypeScript?
Okay. If you want to know the answer to this question, you have to go to our blog, Chrome DevTools. Let me just show you. Okay, let's go to Chrome DevTools. Okay, disable this. So this engineering blog. Okay, here. So we have a write down. So this the DevTools architecture refresh, migrate to JavaScript module. Okay, so even migrate to JavaScript module also take a lot of effort. So it takes us about 1 year plus, and it's not yet finished. So we have to do it for 1 year plus 1.5 years probably, and it's not yet finished, the migration to TypeScript. We recently just almost finished migrating the JavaScript to using the standard JavaScript module, like your import export thing. So because previously in DevTools, prior to this import export JavaScript module, there's none. So in Google, we actually create our custom way of the JavaScript module. But now since the web is they have the standard way to do it, then we migrate to that, and that also take quite some time to do it. So we actually have a write up for that. Yeah, just read, and then you'll find out.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah.
I guess there's not any there's no questions left. So for those that didn't already watch, I think you should watch Jesselyn's actual CDS video.
Yeah.
The 10-minute version. It's really good. Chef Jesselyn.
Yeah, I actually really wear this to do the presentation. So if you want to know what is the ingredient to cook a fried rice, then you can follow. Okay.
Okay. Thank you so much, Jesselyn. Thank you so much for joining us today, especially the audience. So before we end, I just want to point out, so our friends at GDG Singapore, they're having a talk next weekend about managing high and low performance. So there's that. Just a shout out to our friends there. So thank you for coming. And we'll see you next time.